Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We're champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Lu Ngo, coming to your ears from Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. Let's learn together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Doing Well. And on today's episode, we are going to talk about creating well-being, the role of living spaces. And in our virtual studio today, we have a guest from India, and I'm really glad that we can make this conversation happen. I say this every week, pretty much every week, because we have a lot of guests from all over the world, but it's a wonder that we can make these things happen thanks to the internet. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I would like to introduce you to our guest before I throw over to her to introduce herself some more. So Smriti Tandon is a senior research fellow at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi, India. She is pursuing her PhD from the Center for the Study of Social Systems. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Lou, for having me on the show. And I've really been looking forward to this opportunity and I'm really grateful for it. So you want me to say something about the topic?
Well, we're going to save that. I think that'll be fun to kind of save to the end of your introduction, because first of all, I would very much like for you to share a bit more about your professional journey and then share a bit more with us about why you would like to talk about this particular topic. And then you can talk about the topic itself. So yeah, go for it.
So I am a PhD senior research fellow with Jawaharlal Nehru University, and I'm working on this topic of well-being. But my journey up till here has been quite interesting, I would say, because I ventured into actually looking at well-being when I lost my father, and I was kind of in search for myself, and it's in that search that I realized that I have to find something which is just beyond mental health or beyond mental illness. And it is then that well-being happened. But just being a PhD scholar did not stop me, because I am also a counselor and I am a well-being professional. When I say that, I mean that, I guide people towards several practices for exploring techniques and ways to enhance their well-being. And the techniques which I practice myself, like techniques of meditation and yoga, and also, breath work, simple breathing exercises, and also accompanying it with a lot of service. So service towards, in general, towards the society. So there is this organization which I work closely with, the Art of Living organization. My PhD is also based on this Art of Living organization, and that is how I connected to them in 2012. And it's been more than a decade now. I have been pursuing well-being, and I have been involved in various service projects as well with this organization. So it's like a complete journey with them. And also I could add to this that technology has really helped us reach out to several people, because initially 10 years down the line, we see that, a lot of people join this organization, as well as join the well-being classes, or whichever way you want to put it, through online services. So we connect with a lot of people on a daily basis where they are able to pursue their sadhana, where they are able to pursue their breathing, where they are able to pursue their breath works, and they all connect to this platform. Okay, so I would also like to tell you something about my educational qualifications. Like I started, I was born and brought up in a very I would say a small town in India, and then I finished my schooling and my graduation in that town. And I was always an extrovert. So, I became the president of my college, finished my master's, won the chancellor's medal, always into studies. But then there was something, that was missing. There was something which studies don't impart to you. And that's something I realized was missing after my dad's demise, because education really does not prep you for what is to come. It may impart you with certain tools, but you have to find your calling. You have to find your purpose. And I think I could find my purpose only and only after I ventured into my own search, my own journey for well-being. So I think that is how well-being happened, and I'm very happy about it. And I really take a lot of pride in being associated with this topic, and it's very, very close to my heart. So I practice it on a daily basis, and I look forward to it, but I'm still working on it every day, every moment. So a work in progress.
Yeah, well, I think it's a beautiful journey that you share, and thank you for being so open and honest with us. I think it's always hard to go through challenging things like, what you went through, having lost your father. And in Australia, was Father's Day yesterday. So, I think it's something that it's even more probably relatable to our audience. I know this episode is probably going to come out a little bit later, but still, I think we all think about different aspects in our lives, and we relate that to our own well-being journey. And for your particular interest and passion area, I think it's even closer related to home, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know that today's topic is very niche. It's not about well-being in general, but it's about living spaces, and it's actually about creating well-being. And I think that's what I really like about the name of the topic, because it's something you create. You don't just have it. And yeah, I think we're going to talk about that some more later on. But before we do that, we have a section called Have You Met Smriti? So we're going to get to know you better by getting some of your recommendations. My first question is, what is a book you would recommend?
So this book I had read last year. I came across this book called Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life by Hector Garcia and Francis Meller, I think. Mirels, I think, yeah. So this book is about, finding your calling, finding happiness, and always being busy. So what actually happened was that I found this book at a friend's home, and when I started reading it, it was so flowy, so catchy, that I could just finish it off in, say, 2 hours or so. And I realized that it's about the Okinawa people in Japan. And I'm not sure, because these are new words to me as well, so if I'm pronouncing them clearly. And so it's about Japan and the people there. And they have stayed active. They're more than 100 years old, and they're still active. And they encourage, staying active by finding your own ikigai. And that is, your own calling. And when you find it, they say that it's difficult to find, but once you find it, you can keep going on, and you don't have to look back. So the book talks, how little stress is okay, but too much stress is not good. But it also tells us that if you keep sitting and wasting your life, that is not how it will work. You have to actually have a sense of community. You actually need to find friends. You also have to find some small things, some hobbies, some passions, and develop them. So I think this book is also one of those very interesting books which I've read. And
Yeah. Yeah, I do love that book. It's such an easy read, but I think you can learn so much from it every time you pick it up. There's always something new, and it's like nice reminders you can get all the time. So thank you for sharing the book and also summarizing it for our audience. Next question. What is a movie you would recommend?
so I really love historical dramas, and the movie which I is very close to my heart is also a historical drama. It's Schindler's List, and I just love Liam Neeson in it, and the way he's the protagonist in that, and the way he actually he portrays so many emotions, just from hate to anger to sacrifice to I think I love human emotions. So that movie is very close, because somewhere I feel that he's just one man who's trying to save a lot of people, Jews, from the historical Holocaust which had happened, and just the intent being there, just the empathy being executed, the courage which he draws. It's somewhere all the reflection of our well-being. So yeah, I think Schindler's List, definitely one to watch out.
Okay. Interesting perspective. I've heard so much about the movie, but I haven't watched it myself. So now I'm going to have to make sure I watch it very soon. Thank you for sharing. Okay. I wonder if you listen to a lot of podcasts, and if you do, which one would you recommend?
So I was into reading a lot, but I think COVID pushed our boundaries, and I started listening to podcasts. So there's this podcast by British Indian podcaster and content creator. His name is Jay Shetty, and the title of the podcast is On Purpose. So he is a pretty well-known guy. I think he coaches all these Hollywood people, and somewhere closer in the shoes of Deepak Chopra, likes of Deepak Chopra. So I think I would say On Purpose, because it what he says, I believe it. And it's like he says that I make wisdom go viral. So he was a monk who actually returned to the material world, and he wrote a book which is titled "Think Like a Monk and Train Your Mind for Peace and Purpose Every Day." So he believes that you can't be a monk always, but you can start thinking by training your mind. So think like a monk. So I think his podcasts are really interesting ones and full of knowledge. Somewhere self-growth, health, all these meditation, all these topics which I'm interested in. So yeah, I think Jay Shetty's.
Yeah, I do follow his work, and I think I mentioned this. I don't know if it was this podcast or the other podcast of LMSL about happiness, but I did mention that I kind of fall in and out of his content. But recently, I've noticed that there are a lot of topics on purpose that are really relatable. And yeah, I really enjoy reading his first book. I think he had a new book that came out recently about love. I haven't read that one, so that's something to look out for, I guess. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a good podcast recommendation. My next question is about your role model. And we know we probably have a famous role model, or sometimes we just have someone in our lives that we think of as a role model. So I wonder who your role model is.
Okay, so I have, since I'm part of the Art of Living organization, I really look up to the guru who is leading that organization. He's heading it. His name is Sri Ravi Shankar. And I don't know if you've heard about him. Have you, Lu?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so he is, you know what a guru is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he is one of those who is not just a guru, but I would say he is also a humanitarian leader. And he is into conflict resolution, and he's really been working hard towards the idea of one world, one family. That's the idea we subscribe to in India. And we say the idea of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which means that the entire world is our family. So he is a great leader as well as a spiritual guru. And he is the one who is actually responsible for bringing about peace resolutions in a lot of countries. So Colombia, where he's got the highest civilian honor, even in India, he's got the highest civilian honor. And he has also brought up techniques. So one of the techniques, the main, which is the centerpiece, is called the Sudarshan Kriya, which he envisaged somewhere in 1982. And from there on, there has been no turning back. Art of Living presence is in 180 countries. And Gurudev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar is at the helm of it. And he leads by example. So, a very, very simple man, and with a lot of big works to his credit. A lot of not just peace resolutions, but also the principles of non-violence, which he practices himself. So yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. My first time hearing about him. That's certainly that sounds fascinating. Thank you. And final question in this part is about a course. What is a course you've completed that left a really strong impact on you?
So I have done this course called The Art of Silence. It's an advanced meditation program, and it's like 3 days into silence. And you don't speak anything. You are you're doing a digital detox because you're off all the social media platforms. You're off your phone. And so it really charges you up after those 3 days, So you focus better, and you can see that that tingling sensation, that feeling of good vibe about yourself after doing the course, after 3 days when you are not talking much. So you actually sleep better, you focus better. It's like the anxiety levels have reduced, the stress has come down, and you're more mindful. Yeah. You're more socially connected then after that.
Oh, so, wow. That sounds peaceful, and it sounds like a really good course for your well-being, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of those. And now we've got to know you a bit better. Let's talk about today's topic. Today, we're going to talk about creating well-being, and it has to do with living spaces. But I have to ask, of course, first of all, what does well-being mean to you?
So well-being is an extensive topic and means so many different things to different people, an all-encompassing topic. But for me, when I look at well-being, I will talk about different aspects. But when I try to judge somebody's well-being, I would say the visible emotions, the person has, or whether he's feeling or she's feeling well or not. Kind of, are they hopeless? Are they in despair? Or are they really cheerful and happy? That defines well-being. And if I can draw an analogy, I would say that, well-being is like just the way we nurture our children. We have to nurture our well-being. We create that well-being. That's why when we take the topic that creating well-being, how does it come? We are nurturing our well-being every day. So it has the same ingredients which are required for raising a joyful child. I would say that, just if we really want to uplift our well-being, we have to understand that we can become childlike. Start taking things more simply. We have this tendency of overcomplicating our lives. So, which facet do we want to nurture? Facets of well-being, like, so which facet of well-being do we want to nurture? Depends on us. But just like children are pure joy, simply, well-being is also pure joy. You can have a hearty laugh. You can just smile back at someone, and that is also well-being. So it's an open secret, there's an open secret to the universe, and which says that, we worry unnecessarily. There's too much of worry, and whatever we worry about gets attracted to us. So if we stop worrying, we attract positive energy, and whatever positive energy we are getting, it will start reflecting. We will keep having a positive mindset. So like, what are we actually as individuals? We are just energy. So in Hinduism as well as in Buddhism, it is said that there are four goals of life. There are four stages, and when you achieve those four stages in life, those are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So dharma is your law of righteousness. Artha is your need for materialistic desires, your need for money. Kama is your physical desires, your sense, your idea of reproduction, your idea of finding love, of pleasure. And moksha is your liberation. So to achieve perfect well-being, you have to attain all these four life goals. And I think well-being can also be looked at when we say that, feeling whatever we are feeling. We have to understand that at this present moment, are we there in any conversation? Are we there with the person? So are we invested? Even if suppose I'm chopping vegetables, then am I really into that? Whatever little chores am I doing? Or maybe, I'm just reading a book. So am I reading that book properly? So you have to be invested in that. That is well-being, and being in the present moment, and also a bit of gratitude to the divine forces, to whatever has made it possible, like for you to be here, and to understand that you yourself are abundance. You yourself have abundance so much that you don't have to look forward to anything else. And then abundance flows to you, then well-being flows to you. So I think that is well-being. That's a complete whole thing about well-being.
Yeah, I think it encompasses so many different aspects of lives, and you kind of capture that beautifully in saying that, it's not just about this one aspect, but it's also about so many different things if you look, right? And being mindful and present is such a big theme on this podcast. Actually, we talk about that, I would say, every other episode, at least on this podcast. Such a big aspect of it. And I think at the moment, and this is related to one of the other episodes that we recorded today too, where we talk about the fact that nowadays everyone is so busy. We're always rushing, from one thing to another. We don't really slow down. We don't really steal time. That's another concept that I learned today. And that is one big misconception that people have about well-being, because it's always about doing more and, rushing and achieving more, and that would give you well-being. But we've learned that in fact it's not. If you're rushing, you're not mindful. And when you're not mindful, you don't really have that sense of well-being in your life. So that's one of the big misconceptions that I've learned today, and sort of like it got reaffirmed today. Not that it's new, but I wonder what you think to be some of the other big misconceptions that people might have about well-being.
So from what I understand, that people like what you said, that people think we can just rush through it, we can do more, that is well-being. But that is not well-being, absolutely. So for what I understand, that people don't seem to understand that well-being is always a step-up exercise, that there is no perfect state of well-being. And is it that we believe that when things are going well and all hunky-dory, is that well-being? No. When you try to achieve perfect well-being, it does not come in a way, because you are constantly working towards it. You have to keep stepping up. And when we say that, we mean that, we have to enjoy that doing part, that trying part, which we are somewhere missing out when we are in a rush to achieve that well-being. So the journey has to be celebrated. When we are trying to gauge something, then You are doing it in that particular moment. That moment has to be rejoiced. There is no perfect state of well-being. It's always you're trying to attain that perfect state. And connected to this, you have to understand that well-being will never be a constant. So the second thing is that well-being is not a constant. You are continuously making an effort to attain a certain well-being. But there are lows, there are days when you wake up and you feel that it hasn't been a perfect morning for me. And then what do? You recollect yourself and then you start working towards what you have to work. So those downs, those feelings when we don't feel so well, not so well, is also well-being. So being no perfect state of well-being, no constant state of well-being, and also no quintessential way of well-being. Everybody's well-being is unique. You have to understand that we are, nobody is the same. So we are somewhere differing at age. We are somewhere a different gender. So in a different way, everybody is trying to attain a different sense of well-being. So a sense of well-being which I will have, probably you will not be having that. And does it mean that my well-being is not my well-being? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that my well-being is as unique as your well-being. So, well-being is a kind of satisfaction which we achieve, and yet understanding that it is impermanent. It's impermanence. So, a kind of satisfaction which you have after achieving it, yet being mindful that it will not stay that way. It will be fleeting. So every moment you have to keep flowing, you have to keep going with the flow, and every moment you have to keep stepping up your best foot forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that particular misconception, because it's also about being open-minded about other people's definition of well-being, because we're really quick to judge as humans. I feel like that's the tendency of, oh, why do you like doing that? And sometimes that's just kind of like our way of seeing differences, and it kind of defeats the purpose of nurturing our senses of well-being, because in a way, when we're judging others, we're also taking on a lot of like stress and pressure that are probably unnecessary, and I think each to their own, right? Like you can enjoy a certain activity that would bring you well-being, and I would probably not enjoy that at all. I had a friend who said to me like, oh, you enjoy running? Okay, you go do that. I would not do that. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's totally fine by me. You do whatever you want to do. I just invited you to come along, and that's totally fine if you don't want to join me for a run. And another friend would be so on board with it. And so, like different activities bring us a sense of well-being. And it's just so much more than physical activities, of course. I'm just giving an example. But yeah, I'm sure you kind of know where I'm getting at here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and actually, similarly speaking to living spaces, and we'll go into today's topic as well. But I do have this interesting realization recently, where I realized that my kind of living spaces would not be someone that somebody else would enjoy, and I would get you to share your definition of living spaces very soon. But an example I can give on this, which is really hilarious, is one of my friends like to have really like interesting, like horror-like decoration in their living spaces, because that gives them joy. I, on the other hand, like my living spaces to be neat and clean and full of, like positive things, plants, white spaces, white walls, and, just, I don't know, positive quotes around. Like that's just who I am and what I like. But my friend wouldn't like that. And so living spaces vary from person to person. And, something that you look at and you're like, oh, wow, that is interesting. I would not enjoy living there, but somebody else would like have a great time thriving there. So that's kind of like my observation, just based off of your misconception about well-being. But how would you define living spaces actually? Because I know this goes beyond just, the apartment we live in, the room that we have. But I think from a perspective of, sociology, I think it's so much more than that. So how would you define it?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Lou. And very interesting observation. Hilarious one as well. So I think, see, because of sociology, which you mentioned, my training tells me that living space is just not a place where we are living, right? So we have to interpret it. When I look at it, I interpret it as a living entity. I give that space its own due. So it's just not about the people, who are in there. It's not just a physical space or a geographical space, but a space which will have people and with a culture, with a social culture to it, and those social interactions between the individuals will make it more meaningful. We are nurturing relationships in that space, so that living space itself becomes alive. It is like saying that it is not just my home, it is my place where I have people to fall back on. So I think that is a kind of understanding of the living space which I have. And if I would look at it sociologically, I would also see that what kind of location is there in the living space? Where is it located? What kind of planning has been done? And what is it like self-sufficient or not? Will it be able to sustain itself? The position of sustainability. Will it be able to sustain itself? And also the question of accessibility. So, is it accessible to a disabled population? So, also from the safety point of view. So you have to understand that when we are talking about well-being and living spaces, there is an innate sense of human security which we have to nurture, and which we have to impart to that space, and also to the people living there. I don't want to live in an environment which is not safe, which is not my kind of well-being. I don't want to be surrounded by perpetrators, or I don't want to bring up my family there. So I need a space, a living space, which is secure, which provides my sense of security and safety. And I don't think it is about gender. It is also irrespective of the gender, how the living space would look. And for me, living space is a space where bonds and relationships thrive, where I can see, okay, this is my space. It has to be my sense of belongingness.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is more inclusive than just, interior design, right? Because that was initially what I was referring to. But I guess you mentioning something that is beyond just how we decorate and design our spaces is also about the broader context of where we live. And it's so important. And I think another thing that we kind of wanted to touch on is how would this be different? Because obviously we touched on that a little bit. How would the interior design perspective be different from the perspective that we normally understand space in general?
So I think, I'm not a design expert, but I'm a sociologist by training. So having said that, what I do understand is that a design perspective, or a perspective on architecture, would look at space probably as an art form, an opportunity to improvise that particular kind of space, to build on it, to rebuild something, to create. It's more about the area, about the length, the breadth, or more about the aesthetics of a place, how it would be decorated, which room would look in what way, but which is a completely good way of looking at it. Absolutely a right way, because we are actually using that space. So they would be able to tell us more about the usage of that space, which I would not be able to shed light on. But for me, what makes a home would be the people we are in. So it would be an abode rather than, just a four-walled entity. Or if I would just move, because I am in an urban space, if I just move to a suburban space or a rural, a countryside space for that matter, then I have to understand that that there, you're closer to nature. So a design person would want to incorporate that nature within it. But whereas I would say yes, it's there. It's a very very good aspect to be in. But I would not be able to completely, relate to that design aspect, because for me it's also about nurturing the relationship with the nature as well.
Okay. So I think that's a really good way to look at how we can define living spaces, because I think initially when I looked at the topic, I was just immediately thinking about the environment, the four walls that you kind of mentioned. But now that you've mentioned the connection with people that we live with nature, I think that's actually really true, because I used to live alone for 3 years and that was fun. But then at a certain point, it kind of got a bit lonely because I don't have a lot of social connection and I work from home too. And now I have a housemate and I'm like, it's changed my environment completely. And I also remember, not having a lot of plants in my home, and it's like also an urban setting. And then I added one plant and it kind of changed everything. It felt much better. And, small changes, but then I do notice that the living spaces really impact our well-being, especially, at least for me personally, it impacted my well-being in a really good way. For me personally, having a housemate has been good. Having plants has been good. I mean, I have cats and they are a joy to be around as well. But I wonder how you think, sorry?
I want to add to this, Lou, what you're just saying, that there are many converging points as well. So just what you said, there is a kind of continuum with nature, which we don't see in sociology as such, but in the design aspect we do see, and that's called the biophilic space, biophilic style of designing homes. And the interesting part is that this idea of having biophilic spaces arose from a sociologist himself. His name is Eric Fromm, and he somewhere invented this, coined this term biophilia in 1964. And it's now being more used by the design experts, where they say that a close connection with the environment, with the nature, not only heals you, but it also has restorative properties. And you just can't you have to accept that nature has such an important role and essential part of one's well-being. A place without nature, a place without sunlight, or without pets, or without children, or without anything around you, would be a very very limiting environment. And we stay in those urban spaces, those urban concrete jungles, because for us the cities are growing vertically. For people who are more close to nature, you would encounter less. Studies and researchers have shown that they would encounter less issues of mental illnesses. They would have less impact of those breathing troubles which they are having these days. And you also have to understand that the other converging point which I see with sociology and the design aspect is that that when we are talking about the disabled population, we have to be mindful that the disabled population are also a very important stakeholder in our environment, and are we catering to their well-being or not? So that no, so basically building ramps, or which is the easiest example to understand, or having accessible bathrooms, washrooms for them, or maybe elevators which have some braille or some speakers for the kind of disabled population, which it's completely so it would flow down from the architect or from the design perspective. They may consult sociologists to understand what is required, but somewhere it's kind of bridging of the gap. It not only provides inclusiveness, but also interdependence, but also independence to that kind of stakeholder, and also self-reliance to them, which are such valued parts of well-being. So if I'm just trying to put well-being and I'm just thinking out with you, how well-being and design would be, sociology, well-being, design, and it can all be related together.
Yeah, totally. I was going to ask how living spaces impact well-being. You sort of covered part of it already, but the other part of it would be social connections, right? Because I think we probably can notice the difference when we live with family versus when, some of us might live in share houses, going to uni and things like that. And then living alone or, living with other cohabitants. So how would that work? How do living spaces impact our well-being with different kinds of social interactions and different living arrangements?
So before moving on to that, I would like to talk a bit about the family structure, which is changing. So since I am based in an urban center, a metropolitan city, Mumbai. So what I see around is that the family structure is changing, especially the Indian data talks that initially they used to talk about 6+ family members, and now drastically it is coming down to 4. So the nuclear system is on an increasing trajectory. And because of the nuclear spaces, we realize that our value systems are changing, and so are our social relationships. So women are moving towards working. They want to be working women. They want to fend for themselves. And ideas about co-parenting, these were words which we had not heard 10 years ago. It's like co-parenting, which means the husband and the wife both are involved. Earlier, it was that, okay, the wife is there and we are parenting the child. So the idea that, I am a person and myself has come up. And somewhere the idea of co-parenting or being child-free as well. So, or a DINK couple. DINK is like double income, no kids. So those ideas have really, really come up, and the family structures are somewhere changing. So you can't really say that the living spaces would be those quintessential living spaces which we had always had in mind, that okay, my living space would be this way, because as people are changing, so are the needs. People are moving towards professional caregiving, which we did not have in India. We had women being taken for a ride. Everybody would be like, okay, she's there, she'll manage. But it's no more that. Even men are equal partners now. This is what is happening. So when we understand the change in family structure, we can actually understand that, the kind of interactions which are changing. And also with the advent of social media, we realize that people are actually so much on the phones. We are constantly, on the WhatsApp, on the Instagrams. So the concept of living spaces somewhere becomes more and more pressing. And we have to understand that physical presence, is a complete game changer in the idea of living spaces. That whether a person is there for you physically, emotionally, socially, that really impacts your well-being rather than just not being there at all. So having said that, we do understand that living spaces are about people we hold close to us. That sense of security, that sense of love, which is the core human value. The universal language of love. We don't have to actually prep ourselves to attain that kind of well-being in our relationships. We are just always constantly ready for it, because a relationship, for it to flourish, you have to understand that where the physical space is really important, but so so are we in that relationship? What is our role? Are we a giver, or are we a doer, or are we a taker? Where am I in that relationship? So to understand that, spaces are impacting our well-being, and we are the ones who are somewhere in that space, we have to break those binaries which we create, that this is a space where, I have to behave like this way or that way. So it has to be cut down, and there has to be a strong sense of belongingness, a kind of environment which will impart us security, a kind of space which I can call my own. And so somewhere the emotional component of well-being, which can really make or break us, is so important. And space, if I look at it, has to be an effortless space where I really don't have to push myself to feel good in that space. So it could be anything, not just home or not just your own family. It could be your friends. It could be, like you said, when people are staying alone, it could be me walking down to my favorite coffee shop and say, hey, that's my spot where you're sitting on. So that spot gives me that thinking ability, that particular coffee. Suppose I enjoy Starbucks Americano, so I would say that, it gives me that joy. So that is my space. So even a place which is not your own, which you do not own, becomes your own space, because you can be effortless there. And another example which I can give is that when we go to a park, it's like we greet people there, and it's our good vibe thing. So since you go for a run, you do understand that when you go for a run, you would always have similar faces coming, bumping up every day, and you just wish them. So that park, that space becomes your own space. So an effortless space is which actually makes or translates into our well-being, a welcoming space.
Yeah, I think those are really nice examples, actually, because we probably don't think about the impact of the surroundings we have that have on us, because we take them for granted on most days. We're just like, oh, that coffee shop again. Just, I'm just going to walk around and grab a coffee from there. But then it actually gives you so much joy when you really think about it. And I used to have that favorite coffee shop when I was at my previous apartment. Now I have a new one. And yeah, it's actually really nice to kind of have those anchor points in or around the living spaces that we have. I think that's what people call home, that concept of feeling like you're at home. You really need to have those little anchors. So I know that we have so many things else to talk about, and especially because you mentioned so many different aspects, like the community aspect of it, because the living arrangements nowadays are constantly changing. More and more people are living alone, or, living with their little families rather than with their extended family. So I'm conscious of time, and I know that we have so much more to touch on. I know we have about 4 more questions to go through, but since I'm conscious of time, how about you let us know some of the highlights about anything that we might not have covered in this part. So, some key pointers would probably be community, the role of gathering spaces at home, privacy at home, and also eco-friendly practices.
So I would just begin with community. See, we have to what we have to think when we think about community is that we are a social race. We are not people who are meant to be in isolation. So we form bonds, and we want those bonds to be reciprocated to us. And it's only through the community that our need for sociality is actually met. And when we see, our personal goals are there, we do understand that, yes, we do have personal goals, but there is there is a point where we keep that social in mind and then achieve our personal goals, because it is the social which keeps us in check. So it's our community which somewhere doesn't let us fall behind. It keeps us together. Even when one unit in a community falls, then the entire community comes up to help you, to support you. It could be any community. It could be a family. It could be a group of friends. It could be your people with whom in workplace, with whom you interact every day. So even the workplace becomes your own community. Community would make your life more enjoyable, more anchoring, and support you. It's kind of a cementing force. You cannot imagine your life just being in isolation. So if you understand that, when during Christmas, people all everywhere around the world come back to their own family just to celebrate it together, because somewhere we have a coping mechanism, and that coping mechanism is that we have to be together to enjoy to the fullest, to celebrate every achievement. When there is some good news, we want to just call back home and say that, hey, look what I have achieved. Hey, see, this happened to me. Even if we take the other way around, in the idea of mourning or in the death, it is the community that comes up and helps us sail through that mourning period. So we as individuals, we as social individuals, social beings, require constant validation. I cannot survive without validation. And if I say that I don't require anybody's validation, that would be wrong, because we all require that empathetic ear. When somebody just comes and say, hey, I know what your loss means to you. I know you're actually feeling sad, but you will bounce back. You will cope up. That kind of validation, that kind of empathy, you get from the social. You will not get it without having your own set of people. And also, when somebody says some negative things to you, your energy completely drops, and you need your people to make you understand that, okay, this is not your well-being. You have to pull yourself together. So that is what community does to you. I think it's a cementing force. It's actually the wind beneath your wings. And having said that, privacy as a concept was an alien concept to the South Asian societies. We were not supposed to be private people. We were very, very social beings. And privacy brought with it, the notion of privacy itself brought with it a lot of mistrust and a lot of, you can see a lot of mistrust and a lot of secretiveness. When we used to say that, we are a private person, then there was this, there was a kind of a judgmental attitude towards the idea of being private. But now that the families are moving away from their roots, we do understand that we all have a certain private life, which we enjoy. And that kind of privacy also enables us to be creative, to be more thinking. And somewhere, we understand ourselves much better when we are in that private space. It may be just a practice of, meditation or inward looking exercise. So we have this very good research which told us that, we have a cyber self and also a self. So the concept of cyber self, where we are somebody else on the social media platform and than what we are in the real self. But our gathering spaces are those spaces which always help us to take cognizance of the fact that who we are, the way they impact us, the way we could be our worst self in front of our people. We could just have this idea of being imperfect. I don't want to be perfect today, or
Yeah.
or just an idea that, I am not feeling brave enough. I really need to be cheered up. Those kind of gathering spaces, be it any space, your dining space, your living space, or even kitchen, you know. So that idea of gathering with your family, which will be able to pull you out of, which would be able to impart you courage, not judge you. There would be no shying away. You have to be. You could just be yourself in that gathering space. You can not only gather your thoughts, gather yourself, but also collect your emotions to be yourself again in the next few hours or in a new moment.
Yeah.
So it would be right if I could just sum it up and say that gathering space, community, or being a private person, uh, it's all okay. It's all okay as long as we have that space to call a spade and not be shameful about it. Not relegate somebody, not relegate ourselves to a corner, or not belittle my feelings, not belittle my feelings. Just trying to understand that, okay, my dislikes and my likes do matter. They are completely okay if I don't want to behave in a certain way. So just summing it up together, I would say that, those very virtues of empathy, of courage, are actually complementary. You have to be courageous to be empathetic to somebody, as well as you have to be empathetic to draw that courage in certain situations where you don't know how to handle them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I really love what you said that, you could be yourself and you don't really have to pretend or something along that line. And I think I really appreciate that because that's so sacred to us, right? Having our living spaces. It's not just about connecting with other people, with nature around us, but it's so important to connect with ourselves. And it's the worst thing that could happen when you have to kind of hide from your own self in your own living spaces, and that impacts your well-being so much. And so now that you've covered a lot of those insights, let's talk about something more practical. And in this practice section, given everything that you've shared, what is something that you would recommend to our audience to try practicing so that they can maximize their living spaces? And this applies to all different aspects of the living spaces that you already covered. It doesn't have to be just about, how you arrange and design your space, but also the surroundings, the people you live with, the community, and the sense of, gathering belongingness.
So I would say that, one act of kindness every day, that
Huh.
really has a positive impact on your own well-being, as well as for somebody else. It could just be there. It could just be to a stranger. Just smile back, or just wish somebody a cheerful good morning. We just say, have a lovely day. There are so many people we meet when we are coming down our apartments to just rush off to for work, and you're
Yeah.
just saying, have a good day. Just brightens somebody's day, and
Mm.
actually you yourself start moving towards feeling so much more positive, so much that, okay, true, that I will have a good day. I actually start believing in that. Once you
Yeah.
start believing in that, it automatically trickles down. It flows towards you. So your entire persona, your entire mindset, it changes. So I would say, any act of kindness, any gesture of compassion, or anything which you feel, which would not make the other person feel down, it would just uplift your mood as well as somebody else's mood. Just, well, a big thank you also would make somebody's day. So
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's so hard nowadays because I think we feel awkward saying hi to our neighbors in the lifts. At least that's what I've noticed. A lot of people walk in and immediately the first thing they do is they pull out their phone, and I'm like, okay, I'll do the same because
I think our
yeah,
neighbors are really underrated. So
yeah, so
so so
underrated.
they could just be wonderful people, but
Yeah,
we just don't, we're maintaining that privacy somewhere in our head.
Yeah.
It's we have to break those shackles. I think we should not do that.
Yeah, sometimes people, if you say hi to your neighbors in a big apartment complex, people would probably wonder what's wrong with you. I feel like that's kind of like the look that I actually gave personally when someone said hi to me, and I was like, "Yeah, hi." Like, I'm not used to it. It's actually really strange, and I think it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of open-mindedness as well. But I do have to say that I really like what you said, because one of my best friends now is actually my ex-neighbor. So she used to be my neighbor, and we were both on our balconies in the pandemic, and we were just, exchanging a few words and kind of, ask about each other's day. And that's, I think, was that one act of kindness back then. And it nurtured the friendship, and it made the experience living there so much better. And of course, even after she moved away, I still remember that, and I still thought about it a lot, because, as I said, it's so awkward to say hi to your neighbors recently. Nowadays, in general, the past few years, I've noticed maybe we're just in our heads, but sometimes there are actually really nice neighbors that say hi to you, and if they do, don't be like me. Don't give them strange looks. I have to practice that myself, because it's actually really hard to open up to strangers nowadays. Everyone really wants to kind of preserve their privacy and keep to themselves. At least for me, I'm an introvert, so that applies even more to me. But yeah, I think I really like that, and smiling at people, that's not too hard, and it's not too intimidating either. So we can start there. I think that's a really good tip. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we wrap up the podcast, we have this section called Open Mic. This is where you can talk about anything you would like to discuss. Maybe it's something related to the topic that we didn't get to talk about, or it could be about something else completely. So the floor is all yours. Go for it.
So, I could talk about a couple of things, but something which is very close to my heart is that we don't speak about how our eating habits, well-being and food, so how our eating habits impact our well-being every day. We tend to sometimes skip breakfast because we are in a rush to leave, or we are eating too much or too little, or, eating all those, snacking all those junk, which we think is, we have already eaten. But we have to be mindful of what we are taking in our diet. So probably a little bit more towards fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, and somewhere, start moving towards veganism, where we are actually impacting the environment, and thinking that we are doing all the right things, but we are actually not doing the right things. So food is such an important aspect of well-being, because it not only propels you, not only gives you energy to move forward, but also how you are as a person. It defines you, because what you eat is the propelling energy, the energy force inside you. And that energy force is driving you. So whether you want to be driven in a positive way or in a different way altogether, it depends upon you. I think food and well-being are closely intertwined. And when I say, veganism, I really feel for the animals. I really feel for people. Somewhere, the environment is really, really in a bad shape, and we have to prep up a bit. We have to pull up ourselves and say that, okay, we have to somewhere move towards sustainability. COVID actually taught us that we are no more, the earth is not able to bear what is happening to it. And when we did not move out of our homes for, say, so many months, we did see that nature itself tried to heal. And I think nature and well-being, we are part of nature. So our food habits, our practices of sustainability, the way we use plastic, the way we organize our homes, can we move towards minimalistic living and not always crave for, we want so much more, use as many clothes as we have, and not just move towards just unmindful consumption pattern. And you have to understand that Earth is just declining, depleting our resources. And what are we leaving for our children? We have to be mindful enough. And actually, well-being is all part of it. There is no going back from what we have done. But if we are mindful enough, if we are practical enough, and start thinking, my 5-year-old son, he himself tells me that, Mama, we will not carry those vegetables in a plastic bag. We will carry our own bag when we go for grocery shopping. So inculcating it in our children, or inculcating it in our environment, in our friends, or doing little acts together, I think it will bring about a lot of change. So that is one thing. It's food, well-being, veganism, sustainability, nature, what we are doing to our surroundings, being mindful. It all really counts. It is actually what well-being is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really beautiful and powerful message to close with. I think we've got a few podcasts already where we talk about, our connection and relationship with the environment, with nature. And I know that, veganism is really powerful, and it takes a lot of, perspectives. And, it's not like a shift or a switch that we can do overnight. But I think striving to do our best and do better is something that we can all do. And, I'm consciously trying to do more of that. Like, I don't consume dairy, for example, as a start. And actually over the weekend, I discovered oat milk ice cream. It's amazing. And it's actually not bad either for for our health. So I think it's, these are little tweaks and changes that we can all start trying. I had this conversation with a really good friend who is a vegan, and even though I'm not one, I love how open-minded she is. And she did say, it's not about being a vegan all the time and, not consuming dairy or cheese at all. Because she loves that. And she said, sometimes I have days where I cheated a little bit, and so I'm vegetarian rather than vegan. But the main point is to try, right? To do what we can. Is not to label ourselves as a vegetarian or a vegan, because there are so many things that we do on a daily basis that might not be that great for the environment anyway. So it's the sum of our actions, not just what we eat, but so much more than that. And I think that's something we can all be conscious of. So thank you for sharing that message. I think it's not entirely related to our topic of the day, but also actually, when you think about it, could be related, because, we can embed that into our living spaces. So thank you for sharing that. And thanks for being here. I think there's so much more we can cover, which would potentially be a whole different podcast. So we probably would love to have you back some other time.
Thank you, Lu. Thank you for this opportunity. It was great talking to you. I have been listening to these podcasts, so I think somewhere we are all sailing in the same boat. We are all doing our bit towards well-being, towards our friends, towards our families, and towards, in general, creating podcasts is such a wonderful, such a joy. Just listening to it is such a joy. I'm sure creating it would be absolutely a stunning journey. So
yeah, definitely.
Good wishes to all of you.
Before we let you go, if our audience would like to find out more about your work, where should they go?
So I am there on Instagram and also on Facebook. So they could connect me there. And my handle is Smriti, SMRITI .TANDON Tandon 28. So that is they could reach out to me there.
Great. Thank you for sharing. You have been listening to Doing Well, the Wellbeing Science Insights podcast produced by the Wellbeing Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, share, and subscribe to our channel so that other people can find it and we can continue to provide quality content. More of our work can be found on our website, we.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Lu Ngo. Thanks for tuning in.